Hello, my friend. I'm glad you're here. We're about to walk together through an idea so simple it almost feels too light to hold, yet it carries the power to change everything about the way you experience life. It's called the let them theory. At its heart, it asks one piercing question. What if you could free yourself from the burden of controlling others and instead reclaim your own peace? Before we begin, I need to say this. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to BookSnap, and comment below the title of the book you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. Now let's step into the story. Think for a moment about how much of your day is spent trying to manage things beyond your reach. Maybe it's the colleague who never listens, the friend who forgets to call, the partner who doesn't react the way you hoped. Maybe it's the stranger online who says something that cuts you open. Each time your mind rushes in like a firefighter at the scene, trying to douse the flames, fix the damage, and make the world bend to your will. And what's the cost? Exhaustion, frustration, a low hum of anxiety that follows you like background noise. You find yourself rehearsing conversations, strategizing how to win approval, twisting yourself into shapes that don't feel like you. The weight is invisible but crushing. You want so badly for others to behave a certain way, to see you, validate you, change for you, that you forget the one life you can actually live is your own. Mel Robbins begins here, with the universal ache of control. We don't call it that, of course. We tell ourselves we're helping, guiding, making things better, but underneath is a restless fear. If they don't do what we need, will we still be okay? That fear is what keeps us hooked. Picture a marionette show. Strings pulled, bodies dancing, everyone trying to yank each other into rhythm. That's how we move through relationships when control is at the center. And if you've lived this way long enough, it feels normal. But imagine what would happen if one day you drop the strings. That's where the let them phrase comes in. Just 2 words. So ordinary, they might slip past you. Yet when you let them settle inside, you hear the quiet invitation. Let them. Let them not call. Let them leave the room. Let them misunderstand you. Let them judge. Let them go their own way. The first time you try it, it feels almost rebellious, like walking out of a prison you didn't know you built. Your chest expands. The air feels different. You realize nothing collapsed when you stopped managing them. The world didn't end. What ended was your constant wrestling match with reality. But we don't get there instantly. Most of us have lived years trained to adjust, correct, and control. The beginning is awkward. It feels like giving up. Yet Mel insists, this is not weakness. It is clarity. You're finally noticing the boundary between what belongs to you and what belongs to them. And in that noticing, a door opens. Behind it lies energy, peace, and the startling discovery that life can be lighter than you ever imagined. As we continue, we'll see how this phrase unfolds in different corners of life, in our relationships, our inner dialogue, even the way we carry disappointment. But it all begins here. With the heavy armor we've worn for years, the belief that if we just try hard enough we can bend people to our expectations. So pause for a second. Feel the weight of that armor on your shoulders. Feel how tight it has made your breath. And now imagine the possibility, slim, shimmering, almost unbelievable, that you could take it off, that you could walk forward without it. That's the threshold of the let them theory. You remember the first time you actually tried it. The words slipped out like a secret. Let them. Maybe it was something small. Someone cut you off in traffic, usually a trigger for your pulse to surge, for your jaw to clench as you mutter under your breath. But this time, instead of feeding the flame, you whispered, let them. The car sped off, the irritation rose and then dissolved, and suddenly there was only silence. That's the surprising part. The release comes not from fixing the world, but from surrendering your grip on it. In 2 syllables, You hand people back their choices, and you take back your peace. Mel Robbins calls this the simple release. It's deceptively powerful because the moment you stop fighting the river, you feel the current carry you forward. All the energy once spent on managing, correcting, and convincing becomes yours again. Think of how often we live on edge because of other people's actions. You're waiting for that text back. You're hoping your boss notices the extra work you put in. You're silently wishing a friend would remember your birthday. Each time they fail to meet the script in your head, disappointment cuts deep. But the let them theory is like holding a candle in that darkness. It doesn't change what they do, but it changes what you carry. Here's an image. You're holding a rope in a tug of war. The person on the other side is pulling with all their strength. You're straining, sweating, digging your heels into the dirt. The rope burns your hands. Then, in one instant, you let go. Not because you're weak, but because you see the game is unwinnable. The rope falls. Your body steadies. The fight is over. That's what let them feels like. But don't mistake it for indifference. It isn't about not caring. It's about recognizing that their choices are theirs, and your freedom lies in allowing that truth to stand without resistance. Mel tells stories of people applying this in the everyday moments. A friend who always cancels plans last minute. Let them. A coworker who takes credit for your ideas? Let them. A family member who doesn't approve of your life? Let them. At first it sounds passive, almost careless, but slowly you realize this is strength. This is a declaration. I don't need you to be different in order for me to be okay. The release is both tiny and monumental. It feels like exhaling after years of holding your breath. That sigh becomes a habit, a ritual of remembering what is yours to carry and what is not. And there's another layer. When you practice let them, you discover that most of your pain wasn't coming from what others did. It came from your resistance to what they did, like trying to stop the tide with your bare hands. The suffering was in the fight, not the fact. This is why the theory feels so radical. It rewires your reflex. Instead of asking, how can I change them? You begin asking, how can I choose peace? Instead of tightening your fist, you open your palm. So the simple release isn't a single moment, it's a practice. Each time someone shows you who they are, you get to decide, will I grip harder or will I let them? And every time you choose the latter, you feel lighter. It may not solve everything. The world will still be messy. People will still disappoint. Life will still unfold in unexpected ways. But inside that chaos, you carry a calm center, built on the knowledge that you no longer have to manage what isn't yours. That's the quiet revolution of these two words. There comes a moment when you realize the tug isn't just with other people. The tension is inside you. Every time you scramble to fix, to guide, to control, what you're really trying to silence is your own fear. The fear of being overlooked. The fear of not being enough. The fear that if they don't respond the way you hope, it must mean something about your worth. Mel Robbins calls this the mirror within. When you pause long enough to notice, you see that the urge to manage others is a reflection of your own insecurities. It's not just about them. It's about you. Think of a mirror that's been hidden in the attic, dusty and cracked. When you finally wipe it clean, you see not only your face but also the weight you've been carrying. You see the child inside who longed for approval, the teenager who bent to fit in, the adult who still chases validation like a finish line that never arrives. That's what let them exposes. Each time you want to grip tighter, the phrase invites you to ask, what in me feels threatened by their choice? If a friend excludes you, the sting might come not from their action, but from an old wound of being left out. If a partner doesn't text back right away, maybe it echoes a deeper fear of abandonment. The mirror reflects truths we'd rather not face. And yet, this reflection is liberating. Because when you see clearly, you can finally tend to yourself instead of outsourcing your healing to someone else's behavior. You stop demanding that others patch holes in you they didn't create. Mel describes it as shifting from external control to internal compassion. Instead of lashing out or tightening your grip, you pause. You place a hand on your heart, sometimes literally, and remind yourself, their actions are about them, not about me. I don't need to twist myself into knots to earn what is freely given when it's real. This is where the theory deepens from a clever phrase into a transformative practice. The more you use it, the more it reveals. It isn't just about giving others space. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that have been waiting to breathe. You begin to notice patterns. The colleague who always interrupts doesn't just annoy you. They awaken that old ache of not being heard. The family member who criticizes you doesn't just frustrate you. They echo the voice of doubt you carry inside. Each time you say let them, you're not just setting them free. You're setting yourself free from the prison of old fears. And in that freedom, something surprising happens. Compassion sneaks in. You start to see others not as villains but as mirrors themselves. Their behavior reveals their wounds, just as yours reveals yours. The critic might be carrying insecurity. The person who leaves might be running from their own fear. You don't excuse it, but you understand it. And understanding softens the edges of anger. This mirror work is not comfortable. Sometimes it feels like standing naked before yourself. But the discomfort is growth. Every let them moment is a chance to look inward and ask, what is this teaching me about myself? What part of me needs gentleness right now? And as that inner dialogue grows stronger, something shifts. You realize you don't have to wait for others to behave right for you to feel whole. The wholeness was always waiting inside, beneath the layers of fear and control. So while the world keeps spinning and people keep acting however they will, you learn to meet it all with a quieter strength. A strength that comes not from bending others to fit your story, but from writing a story in which your peace is no longer negotiable. That's the gift of the mirror within. There's a shift that happens once the mirror is clean. You stop obsessing about how others are moving and begin noticing how you are moving. The spotlight turns, and suddenly it's on you. Not in a way that feels harsh or exposing, but in a way that feels clarifying. This is the part Mel Robbins calls shifting the spotlight. Think about how much time you've spent studying the people around you, almost like a detective gathering evidence. You watch for clues. Do they like me? Do they approve? Did they notice what I did? Every gesture, every silence becomes data in your mind's endless case file. You replay scenes, you decode tones, you strategize responses, and all the while, your own life waits in the wings. But what if the spotlight swung back to center stage, right where you stand? Imagine the warmth of it landing on your own skin, the beam illuminating not what they're doing, but what you want, what you need, how you choose to live. That's what let them makes possible. When you stop trying to control others, you reclaim the bandwidth to tend to yourself. The mental energy that once spiraled around their choices is suddenly available for your own growth. It's like taking the water you once poured into cracked jars and finally giving it to the roots of your own garden. Mel points out something powerful here. People will always do what people do. That's not cynicism, it's reality. Some will misunderstand you. Some will leave. Some will love you fiercely. And some will forget you exist. The question is not how do I stop them? The question is, how do I stand tall regardless? Shifting the spotlight is about asking different questions. Not, why didn't they invite me? But what do I want to do with my evening? Not, why can't they see my worth? But, how can I live in a way that honors my worth whether they see it or not? And here's where the metaphor of theater helps. Picture yourself on stage. For years, you've been frozen, craning your neck toward the audience, trying to read their expressions, adjusting your lines to keep them pleased. But what if the play isn't about them? What if the role of your life is to inhabit the character fully, to speak your lines with conviction, regardless of whether the seats are full or empty? That's the liberation of the spotlight shift. You stop begging for applause and start living your script. Of course, this isn't instant. Old habits claw back. You'll still feel the urge to glance at the crowd to adjust for their approval. But the more you practice let them, the more you trust the stage beneath your feet. You realize, I'm not here to control the audience. I'm here to live the truth of this story. And the irony, when you stop grasping for validation, real connection often grows. People are drawn to the gravity of someone rooted in their own light. By shifting the spotlight inward, you don't lose others. You meet them on healthier ground. So let them be who they are. Let them think what they think. And let yourself finally step into the glow of your own life. There's a fear that sneaks in when you hear the words, let them. It whispers, if I let them, won't I lose control? Won't I look weak? But Mel Robbins insists the opposite is true. This isn't about becoming passive. It's about building the kind of boundaries that set you free. She calls it liberation, not surrender. Think about what happens when you say yes to everything. You swallow your frustration, stretch your time thin, allow people to lean on you in ways that leave you drained. Outwardly, you look agreeable. Inwardly, you simmer with resentment. That's not kindness, that's self-abandonment. The let them theory interrupts that cycle. It gives you a new script. Instead of bending and twisting yourself to meet others' demands, you pause and realize they're allowed to ask, but you are also allowed to decline. They're allowed to complain, but you're allowed not to carry it. They're allowed to judge, but you're allowed to stay rooted in your truth. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors. And let them is the hinge that allows those doors to swing open or closed with intention. You let others knock, but you decide who enters. Without boundaries, you feel trapped in your own home. With them, you feel free to host life on your own terms. Mel shares stories of how this plays out in real life. A woman realizes she doesn't have to attend every family gathering out of obligation. She whispers, let them, when relatives gossip about her absence, and she uses that space to nurture her own peace. A man learns he doesn't have to respond to every criticism at work. He lets them talk, and in doing so, he protects his focus and dignity. Each time, the phrase is not about ignoring people. It's about respecting yourself enough to choose where your energy flows. Here's a picture. Imagine your life as a garden. Without boundaries, anyone can trample through, pulling up flowers, scattering weeds, leaving footprints on the soil. But when you set clear paths and fences, the garden thrives. The sunlight falls evenly, the roots grow deep, and visitors learn to tread carefully. Boundaries do not keep love out. They keep respect in. The magic of let them is that it creates space. You no longer lunge to stop someone's behavior. Instead, you step back and notice, this is their choice. Now, what is mine? The shift is subtle but profound. You stop living in reaction and start living in creation. And the deeper truth, boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about clarifying you. When you say, let them, you're not cutting ties, you're untangling knots. You're saying, I can love you without losing me. This liberation doesn't make life easier in every moment. Sometimes it means sitting with discomfort, watching people walk away, or enduring their disapproval. But each time you stand firm, you reinforce the message, my peace matters. My energy is mine. So when someone pushes, criticizes, or demands, remember this. They can act as they wish. And you, steady, grounded, clear, get to choose your response. That's not weakness. That's power. That's power. That's power. Something unexpected happens when you start practicing let them. The energy in the room changes. Tension softens. Conversations ease. Conflicts that once consumed hours dissolve in minutes. This is what Mel Robbins calls the ripple effect. Think of throwing a pebble into a pond. The circles widen outward, touching shores you can't even see. That's what your inner shift does. When you stop trying to control, others feel it. The fight drains out of the tug-of-war because one side simply lets go of the rope. Consider a family argument. You know the pattern. Raised voices, words sharp as glass, everyone talking but nobody hearing. Usually you jump in, trying to correct, defend, persuade. The storm escalates, but then you remember the phrase, let them. You take a breath. You stop pushing. Suddenly, the energy shifts. Your silence isn't surrender, it's clarity. The storm loses fuel. The room exhales. It's the same in friendships. A friend insists on gossiping. You used to join in, or worse, try to lecture them out of it. But this time, you let them. You don't scold, you don't indulge. You simply choose not to engage. Without resistance, the gossip fizzles. What remains is the space for a different kind of connection, or none at all. And in workplaces, too, the effect is striking. A colleague undermines you in a meeting. Your old reflex would be to confront in the moment, to prove your worth, to win the unspoken battle. But with let them, you step back. You keep your composure. Others notice. The contrast speaks louder than any defense could. The ripple touches everyone at the table. This is the paradox. By letting people be who they are, you influence the dynamic more than you ever did by controlling. Not because you forced change, but because you created space for it. Here's a metaphor. Imagine a clenched fist and an open palm. The fist is tight, rigid, fighting to hold on. The palm is soft, receptive, unthreatened. Which has more room to hold the world? The open palm. When you live open-handed, others feel it. They sense safety instead of control. And from that safety, real change sometimes blooms. Mel reminds us, though, that this ripple doesn't mean everyone will suddenly behave better. Some won't. Some may even pull further away. But what shifts is you. And that shift changes the dance. The constant conflict, the endless trying, the silent exhaustion. It begins to evaporate. And strangely, love grows in the gaps. When you let people be, you discover which relationships are real. You learn who shows up when you stop managing them. You see who values you without needing you to bend. That clarity is priceless. The ripple effect is not about controlling outcomes. It's about creating environments where honesty and peace can exist. And when you carry that presence into the world, it travels farther than you know. A softer conversation at home leads to a calmer day at work, which leads to a kinder word to a stranger, which leads to ripples you'll never trace. All of it begins with 2 words whispered to yourself. Let them. Once the ripples begin, you start noticing something deeper. It's not only your relationships that shift, it's your inner world. When you stop chasing and controlling, you suddenly have space inside you that feels almost unfamiliar. Mel Robbins calls this turning inward, and it may be the most transformative part of the entire practice. Think about how much mental noise is created by other people. The endless speculation. Why did they say that? Should I respond? What if they don't approve? How do I make them see? It's like carrying 1,000 radios tuned to different stations, all blaring at once. The moment you whisper, let them, you reach out and click one off. Then another, and another. Silence begins to grow. At first, that silence feels strange. You're used to being filled with noise, but soon the quiet becomes a kind of homecoming. In the stillness, you hear things you've been missing. Your own desires, your own voice, the pulse of what truly matters to you. Turning inward doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop outsourcing your peace. You no longer treat other people's reactions as your compass. Instead, you learn to ask yourself, what do I want? What feels aligned? What nourishes me? It's like redirecting sunlight. For years, you've angled mirrors outward, trying to shine brightness onto others, hoping they'll reflect it back. But when you tilt those mirrors inward, the light falls on you. Suddenly, your inner soil starts to grow. Ideas bloom. Energy returns. Creativity stirs. Mel describes how people often discover hidden strength in this stage. Freed from the burden of controlling, they start pursuing passions long ignored. They give themselves permission to rest, to dream, to live in ways that once felt indulgent, And what's remarkable is that this inward focus doesn't make them selfish. It makes them more present, more authentic, more capable of loving without conditions. Here's a picture. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest. For years, you've been hacking away at the branches around you, clearing paths for others, guiding their way. But one day, you set down the machete. You turn around, and behind you is a trail leading deeper into the heart of the forest. Your forest. You begin walking it, step by step. The air is fresher. The ground is softer. You realize this path was waiting all along, but you were too busy cutting paths for everyone else to notice. That's what turning inward feels like. A rediscovery of the terrain of your own soul. And something else emerges. Clarity. The more you listen to yourself, the less chaotic life feels. Decisions that once seemed tangled begin to untie. Relationships reveal their truth. Opportunities appear where you once saw only walls. Because when the noise quiets, the signal comes through. This stage isn't always easy. Sometimes the silence brings up loneliness, grief, or old wounds you've avoided. But even then, the inward turn gives you the courage to face them. You're no longer numbing yourself with the endless chase of managing others. You're sitting with your own life as it is, and learning that it's enough. In that turning, you stop waiting for someone else to hand you peace. You discover it was yours to claim all along. There's a lightness that comes when you truly begin to practice let them. At first it's subtle, like a loose knot finally giving way, but over time it becomes undeniable. A buoyancy you carry into every corner of your life. Mel Robbins calls this the joy of letting go. Imagine walking with a heavy backpack you didn't realize you were wearing. Inside are stones labeled with everyone else's choices, judgments, and moods. You've been carrying them for years. Replaying arguments, rewriting conversations, worrying about things you can't change. Then one day, you stop, open the pack, and start setting the stones down, one after another. Let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them disagree. Let them stay stuck. The weight disappears, and suddenly your steps are easier, your spine straighter, your breath deeper. Joy creeps in through the cracks. It shows up in small ways first. The laugh you didn't stifle when someone rolled their eyes. The calm that stayed with you even after a friend canceled plans. The way you notice the color of the sky instead of the tension in someone's tone. These aren't just small pleasures. They're evidence of freedom. Because joy doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from releasing it. The more you let go, the more room you make for gratitude. You start noticing what's beautiful instead of obsessing over what's broken. You start cherishing who shows up instead of mourning who doesn't. And here's the paradox. When you stop clutching so tightly, life often delivers more of what you hoped for all along. Relationships feel lighter because you're no longer weighing them down with expectation. Opportunities appear because your energy is no longer knotted in resentment. Even your body relaxes. The tension in your shoulders, the knot in your stomach, the restless nights begin to ease. Mel describes this as a daily practice, not a one-time revelation. Every morning, you get another chance to whisper, "Let them." Every evening, you notice how those words have shaped the day, and gradually, your nervous system learns a new rhythm. One not built on reactivity, but on peace. The joy is not just in what you release, it's in what you gain. You gain presence. You gain clarity. You gain a steady sense of self that doesn't wobble every time someone else falters. And, perhaps most importantly, you gain the courage to trust that life will unfold even if you stop managing it. Here's a picture. A bird perched on a branch. It doesn't cling to the branch because it fears falling. Its security isn't in the wood beneath its feet, it's in its wings. That's what the joy of letting go feels like. You stop gripping so hard because you know you can fly. This joy doesn't mean life is without pain. People will still disappoint you. Moments will still sting. But now, those moments don't drown you. They pass through like weather, while you remain anchored in a deeper calm. That's the quiet miracle of let them. It's not just about lessening pain. It's about making space for joy to finally have a home. By now, you begin to see the shape of an entirely different life. One where you are no longer ruled by the need to control, to fix, to win approval. Instead, you are guided by a steady trust in yourself and in the unfolding of life. Mel Robbins calls this living the let them life, a way of being marked by freedom, alignment, and peace. Picture waking up in the morning without the usual dread of who might disappoint you today. Instead, there's a quiet anticipation. Whatever comes, I can meet it with clarity. If someone forgets, let them. If someone judges, let them. If someone surprises you with kindness, let them too. The phrase works both ways. You allow people to reveal their truth, whether it fits your expectations or not. Living the let them life doesn't mean apathy. It means trust. You trust that others are allowed their paths, and you are allowed yours. You trust that you don't need to micromanage the world for it to keep turning. You trust that your peace is not fragile, but resilient. Mel often emphasizes this. Letting them doesn't mean letting yourself go. It doesn't mean tolerating mistreatment or abandoning your needs. In fact, it means the opposite. It means standing so firmly in who you are that you no longer have to bend for every gust of wind. You set boundaries. You say no when you mean no. You say yes when your heart says yes. And you let the chips fall where they may. The result is a life that feels lighter, yet stronger. Relationships built on control may fade, but those built on authenticity grow deeper. Conflicts may not vanish, but they no longer own you. Disappointments still come, but they no longer define your worth. You begin to live in rhythm with yourself, not in reaction to others. Here's the image that lingers. A river flowing. For years, you stood in the middle, trying to push the water back, redirect it, force it into channels that fit your vision. Exhaustion was your only reward. But now, you've stepped onto the bank. You watch the river move, and you let it. You no longer fight its current. Instead, you walk alongside it, free to notice the trees, the sky, the stones beneath your feet. The river flows. You live. That is the let them life. A life where freedom is not something granted by others, but something chosen by you. A life where you stop negotiating your peace and start embodying it. A life where joy, clarity, and love grow naturally because you've made space for them. And so, as we close this journey, let the words echo in your mind. When someone disappoints you, let them. When someone surprises you, let them. When life unfolds in ways you didn't expect, let it. Because in letting go, you discover the truest kind of power. The power to live free. To live free. To